Right, if we could start, thank you. Good evening and welcome to East Evans District Council's Scrutiny Committee meeting of the 30th of January 2025. I'm your Chair, Councillor Mike Goodman. This meeting is being recorded and is live on the Councillor's YouTube channel. There is no fire alarm drill anticipated today. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building through the nearest fire exit by following the green rings man signs above the doors and make your way to the rear of the car park. The organiser of the meeting will tell you when it is safe to return. Please make sure your phones are either muted or switched off. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting, and any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting with a roll call of committee members present, which will include declarations of interest. When you hear your name, please unmute your microphone and confirm you are present, and please state whether you have any declarations of interest in items of the agenda or not. So, can I hand over to you, Sarah, to start the roll call?
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Jenny Brown?
Present. No declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Goodman?
Present and no declaration of interest.
Thank you. Councillor Heath?
Present and no declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Johns?
Present and no declarations, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Levine?
Present, no declarations.
Thank you. Councillor McKinder?
Present, no declarations.
Thank you. And Councillor Wibley?
Present, and I don't think I have any declarations.
Thank you. The meeting is quorate, Chair.
Thank you. Well, agenda item 1, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 7th of November, pages 3 to 8. Now, does any councillor have any comments on the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 7th? Or do we all agree the minutes? All agree the minutes? Thank you. Item 2, apologies. Have we got apologies for today's meeting, Sarah?
Yes, Chair, we have. So, Councillor Anne Hall, Councillor Matt Hall, Councillor Hartnell, Councillor Davey, Councillor Chapman, Councillor Barlow, Councillor Toy and Councillor Bloxham.
Thank you. Can I ask, are there any declarations of interest from councillors outside the committee? Yes, Roy.
I think, is it item 8? I'm a farmer and a landowner.
Yeah, thank you. Noted. Now, there are no members of the public registered to speak, and there are no matters of urgency and no confidential items. Now, we would normally now go on to agenda item 7, but what I propose to do, because we've got a number of farmers here today, and I welcome you to our scrutiny meeting, and so what I intend to do is take agenda item 9 first, pages 14 to 16. What I want to make clear to people that wouldn't know, today is a scoping document. We will agree today how to scope going forward with the issue of the farmer's inheritance. And we would do that with the paper that Andrew will deliver to us in a minute. But it is not a debate about it. This is the scope, and the debate will come in later on. Now, what I would like to do now is to ask Andrew to present that, but then I'm going to ask any of our farmers who would like to say a few words. I know you haven't registered, it's not a problem for me, but I'll call you when Andrew's finished if you do wish to talk. Okay, so Andrew, do you want to present your paper?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Could I go outside and see if there's more farmers? Because they wouldn't be expecting this to come on the agenda now. They would expect it later on.
By all means, yes, because you're not in the committee, so that's absolutely fine. Yes, Andrew. Where's he going?
Hang on.
Mr. Levine, Councillor Levine. Fine.
Oh, he's going to get here in Luke.
All right.
just sing our quorum disappear. See you later. Yeah, that's what I was just. Run away. It takes me a while to add.
We'll hold fire until he comes back.
It's like HRB, we played those games. Not today, but oh, let's just wait for.
Yeah, we'll wait. Yeah. No, we're waiting for you patiently. Andrew, would you like to present?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to explain the background and the chain of events that have led us to this evening, Chair. So this started with the autumn budget, which was presented by the Chancellor, I think on the 30th of October last year. And that announced reforms to both agricultural property relief and business property relief, and the subsequent impact in relation to inheritance tax. And so that was presented as part of the budget. It's fair to say, I think those proposed reforms have proven to be very controversial. But also, there has been, I think, some perhaps confusion is one word that was used, but some debate around the actual precise impact of that as well, Chair. So that the chain of events was then that prompted a motion to the 4th of December meeting of full council, and that is replicated in or reproduced in the papers in front of you tonight in terms of the scoping paper, and that really refers to how best to get to the heart of the issues, to understand the impact, particularly within an East Devon setting. A particular concern, I think, around, if you like, the intergenerational transfer of farms and how that affects farming families and the farming community in the district. And obviously you can see that the motion was referred to scrutiny in order to understand that issue in more depth. As a local government officer, I think it's fair to caution that issues around inheritance tax and capital gains tax are not my forte, and therefore I think what the scoping document seeks to do is to bring together hopefully the bones, if you like, and no doubt this can be further finessed, but the bones of how the issue can be explored by the committee, some of the expertise that will be required to draw on that, and how ultimately the committee can reach a further, better informed view that is specific to the context of East Devon, and to understand ultimately the likely impact. You can see there's also reference in the motion to writing to both the Chancellor and to the Secretary of State for Food Security and Rural Affairs in respect of putting forward the position in relation to East Devon and how that could hopefully seek to influence the future evolution of national policy, Chair, as well.
When you said right to the Secretary of State, has that letter been sent yet?
No, it is drafted, Chair, so it's ready to go. It will highlight, I think, subsequent to this meeting tonight, the letter will be dispatched, but will highlight the work that's going to be undertaken and put that, if you like, on the radar of the Secretary of State and the Chancellor, and obviously offer the opportunity to feed the results of this work back to them as well.
Thank you. So in summary, what we're going to do tonight is to scope out the approach we're going to take to get the right evidence, so we can actually have proper evidence in what came up in the full council meeting, which was a really good debate, was did we actually know the real consequences and the effect? And what's important over the next 2 or 3 months, which you see here, we've got 2 or 3 months at least to do this work, is to find out exactly who will be affected and how. And you use the word, I thought, really importantly, it is also not just the farmers in terms of their livelihood, it's also about food security for the nation. So before I open up to outside the committee, I just want to invite any farmers who would like to give us a couple of minutes on how you see it and what we should take into account when we start to debate this shortly. So if you come up to the mic.
Hi, my name's Martin Rosewell from Cheltenham Farm, Sidmouth. Basically, I'm due to inherit our farm in the next, well, soon, like in the next 10 years. If it comes into place, basically, we looked into it and I would have to sell over half our farm. We own 200 acres, obviously, all the stock, all the assets we've got, and it really, really would affect us immensely. No worries.
Yep, thank you, Mike. Just a question to the farmers, really. My understanding is that you can have up to £1 million before you start paying inheritance tax. But am I right in thinking that most of the farms, the assets would be over that amount, so you would then pay tax on the shortfall? And I do understand about the cost of living and the cash flow, because what we're talking about here is assets, aren't we, rather than your cash flow? Because my understanding is that as farmers, you don't get an awful lot net profit from your farms. So am I right in assuming that most of it is tied up in assets, and those assets are more than £1 million, which is quite understandable for property these days?
That's all right. Hello, my name's Martin Nanskivell. I wasn't prepared to speak here tonight, but I feel when many people are represented. But in answer to your question, yes. What we get paid for our produce is bare minimal, really. The way I see it, you've got the supermarkets. If I just take milk, for instance, we all understand milk. Takes us a couple of years to produce a cow, to produce milk. We deal with all the messing about, all the weather, anything. We produce an A1 quality material, milk. It goes off. In 24 hours, that is turned around and put into bottles. And the next 12 hours or so, that'll be on the supermarket shelves. Okay? That in turn goes out of the door. The supermarket gets paid for that. They don't have to pay for that produce for, say, 2 months, because they'll have too much turnaround. So you've got one end of the scale where we're working really hard to produce an A1 product. And you've got the other end of the scale. So there's 3 bits to that. The sharing of money regarding where it goes to produce that product is uneven and unfair. And the supermarkets know that. It's a bit like a carrot and a stick, really. They give us enough to keep going. And the same with everything else. But in answer to your question, yes, a house and a few acres of pony paddock can be close to £1 million. You've got a lot of money coming down from up country or whatever, like buying these bits of ground or whatever, like that pushes the ground up for us as well as farmers. And but yeah, we're only rich if ever we sell up. But I always tell people, I've got the farm. I inherited it from my granddad. It's gone through father and mother. We use that to make a living. And at the end of the day, hopefully, one of my kids will take it on again. It's an asset. It produces and makes a living for us. It's not a crazy lifestyle. It's not a crazy living. And it's a lot of people wouldn't be able to walk in our shoes or the farmer's shoes and do the hours we do and whatever like. But yeah, what you see in the picture and when you add it all up, yeah, it comes to millions. But it's just a figure, and we use that figure to make a modest living, to be honest. And you see our tractors, and everybody criticises, you got £100,000 tractor. Yeah, we have to have that to a fashion. It's economies of scale, and one man has to do more. because we've been forced to produce more per person. You know, we have to keep our costs down. Labour is our biggest cost. Finding labour is a big issue as well. And yeah, I'm not really prepared, to be honest, to speak, but I'm quite happy to answer any questions.
You've done very well, thank you. Before I ask for any more questions, is there anybody else wants to speak from our farmers? Yes, sir. And then we'll ask you questions.
Well, I'm a one-man band contractor, and I work with a number of farms and other contractors. And it's very seasonal. You might think I earn a fortune, but it really is stupidly long hours. I can go out at 6 o'clock in the morning and come back at 3 the following morning and be expected to go back out again at 7 o'clock in the morning to do the same job again. Now, I'm the last of my line, and I've sold my farm before it got too bad because I couldn't make it work. But there are a lot of farmers, especially in East Devon, that are family farms. They're not always classed as businesses. A lot of them trade on a private business account. And they trade, and they're in their late 60s to early 70s and late 70s, and they're not willing at the moment to hand it down to their son or daughter. So they're not willing to transfer power. And this is where the trouble's going to be, is there were two lads outside in their 20s who were who would like to take over their father's farm, but by the time they get to do it, this inheritance tax and other taxes, they won't be able to farm, and they got 200 or 300 acres. And as the gentleman behind me, Martin, said, we don't get what we need for the production of what we produce. We are told what we are going to get. We can't say tomorrow morning, a ton of potatoes is going to cost you £1,000. They just laugh at you. You either take £500, sir, or we don't take your potatoes. And that's how cruel this job is. It's not fair by any stretch of the imagination. And I've been around a long time. I'm in my 60s, and I've had enough, but I do it because I enjoy doing it. And that is the trouble with a lot of people. It's more of a lifestyle. A lot of people say farming is more of a lifestyle because you don't earn a fortune out of it. All right?
Thank you. And thank you.
Can I just say something just quick? Sorry, yeah. Going back to this here, it's all about this here inheritance tax, isn't it? And they want to take a chunk of money for when it changes hands. Well, what's happened is it's all come in too quick. For generations, we've been told there's no problem, and the older parents and that held on to the farms because they've always been told by whoever, the advisors or whatever, yeah, there's not a problem, hold on to it, because in the end, you've got control of it and whatever, that's not a problem. But it's all come in a little bit too quick. If it came in and there was 20 years in front of us all, it's like my parents. My parents got a vast majority stakeholder now, and they are 83. And, we've got a guarantee they've got to live for 7 years. Well, a lot of farms can't do that, and it ain't going to happen. And when it comes down to it, and we're going to have to say every farm's going to have a chunk of it maybe to sold, because they can't raise that money through what they're selling. This is what I was trying to get at before. It isn't like any other industry. They'd look at all the assets and they say, well, you should be making 10% of all your assets as well as an income and all the rest of it. And farming ain't like that, because any businessman will look at our portfolio and what we got and say, they'd have a laugh. Because you've got so much money tied up, nobody would do it. It's, but yeah. Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much for those contributions. Now, before we go and start to debate and confirm our terms of reference that Andy shared with us recently, any questions from members of the committee who would like to put to the farmers? Because I think it's good to see the farmers here because they can give it as it is. And so let's make use of them, dare I say. If you've got some questions, please ask them. Joe.
It's not so much a question to the farmers. What I would say is that today we're working out how we're going to do this. And I think once we have those, it would be really great to get them in again. I don't feel, I feel like I'm right at the start of learning about this. So I think any questions I ask now wouldn't necessarily be useful, but certainly, I know they're on the list of people we should consult. I think, and then rightly they're at the top of the list.
Yeah.
So in future, please come back.
Thank you. A quick question, because obviously I'm on the council, I'm not a farmer. I know a lot of farmers, but I'm not in farming myself. The government have obviously made this decision, etc. Have any farmers or farmers' unions, etc., been even consulted on this before they decided to make it legislation and the rest of us have to follow it? And my second point would be, not a question for the farmers, but when on ours it says what experts are needed to help with the review, we've got National Farmers Union and East Devon District Council officers. I would also recommend that we have a couple of farmers from within the area that know what they're talking about and ask them to also join us if that's possible. Thank you.
As to consultation to farmers, I don't think there ever was. It was a rumour, muted rumour, but it was never actually formally presented to us until the actual budget, when we knew for definite that it was going to happen. I think it's by 2026, isn't it? Yeah, it is by 2026. This is going to be enforced. So, but we got 2 years to try and the farmers have got, and the East Devon is particular, like a councillor chairman said earlier on to me. East Devon is particular because it's mainly family farms, small family farms, 150, 200 acres. It sounds a lot of ground. So that's probably 200 football pitches is 200 acres. It's not just that, it's the stock in trade, your tractors, your machinery, anything you own or partly own. When you're growing a crop, apparently you don't get penalised, but as soon as you put that crop into storage, that becomes an asset. Well, a lot of farmers can't make ends meet now when it comes down to that, and the boy wants to take over or the girl wants to take over, he ain't going to be able to. He can have his farm chopped in half. Now, they do say they're going to allow up to 3 million, but that includes your house and lots of other odds and ends. But it doesn't make too much. It's still going to affect the majority of East Devon farmers.
Thank you. Yeah, yes, sir.
Could I ask something? When I was young, I'm not a farmer. I have got farming family, but when I was young, the story always was the farmer's overdraft increased in winter, decreased in summer, and that's about all the cash the farmers had, the overdraft. And what I hear from you now, what worries me is, for example, if you were to be hit by inheritance tax. Oh, sorry. No, that's fine. If you were to be hit by inheritance tax, where are you going to get the money to pay for it? And secondly, from what I heard so far, maybe you can confirm it to me, you're really constrained by the supermarkets who have a monopoly on food purchases, and you can't make ends meet simply because you get what they give you. Is there any grain of truth to what I've said?
Just a quick answer to that was, I don't think you, I think with the supermarkets, I'm not sure that's what we want to debate, but I understand the challenges farmers have. But is there anything you want to come back on that, other than we know that the supermarkets do control things? No.
I would say the gentleman's quite right, really. It's just what we're up against is to slice up a farm and have to pay a huge chunk of money would gradually erode every farm, and every farm would get smaller. So the efficiency of that farm in turn would become less so. So it's taken, it's gnawing away at it, if you know what I mean. And there isn't the money in there. If it'd be great, let's have a decent price for our goods. Yeah, not a problem. Everybody in the country would pay a little bit more, and then we could pay. We could do what we're asking. Like, that wouldn't be a problem. Right. The last comment from the gentleman has just got, and then we will move on.
I forgot what I was going to say, but basically, if you split the farm up, so if you have a 200-acre farm and you have to sell 80 to 100 acres of it, there's no guarantee that 80 to 100 acres will ever come back in farming. Yeah? There's no guarantee, because there's too many lifestyle people, and I don't blame them. They can buy this 80, 100 acres and just cut it as a lawn. I know there's a place not very far away from me. It's 130 acres, and it's a garden. and it always has been a garden for about 25 years. Well, this is happening more and more readily. 20 acres here, 20 acres there being sold off to a private for their allotment gardens. But there's no guarantee, but that doesn't produce for us, for you and the rest of us. And it won't come back to farming. Once it gets sold, it's no guarantee the next farmer will be able to buy it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now let's go, if we can, go on to Andrew's report.
Can I speak?
Yes. Go on, Roy. No, you can go.
I find it much easier to speak stood up. Now, what hasn't been said is that many of these young farmers, or many farmers' children, never have any wages. They work for years and years for nothing in the hope that one day they will inherit the farm. They just get bare living expenses. I mean, I was very lucky. My father always paid me the minimum wage, so I was able to save up, and when I became 17, I passed the driving test and I was able to buy my own car. But most farmers' children drive the farm vehicles. If they go to if they go to a dance or anything, or go to a show, they're driving the farm vehicles. That's the way it is. By law, there's no law to say that farm children have to be paid. You know, I'm talking about perhaps people in their 20s, 30s. Even people in their 50s don't get paid sometimes. The parents are living. I've spent quite a lot of time on YouTube, Council YouTube.
Roy, can we just keep, because otherwise we're going to be here late into the night.
Yeah, you can listen to me tonight. And I've watched and seen a lot of information about farm inheritance tax. I've studied it. I've watched other councils debating it. And it's not good. The information I get, I own 80-acre farm, and if they say you can give it to my son, I've only got one child, one son. If I give it to my son, the farm, I'm not allowed to live in the farmhouse anymore. I have to move out of the farmhouse and the farm where I was born, where my father was born, where they died. My mother and father, they died in that house. I was born in the farmhouse. I would have to move out. It doesn't count for me to give it to my son. How wrong is that? How many people look after their parents after their parents have given them their houses? But farmers aren't allowed to do this. I've checked it out with solicitors and accountants, and that is correct. You know, I've been through it all before. When my father handed me over the farm in 1985, he gave me the land, and the way we got round the farmhouse problem was that I bought the farmhouse from him, but he died in 18 months, and then I had to pay gift tax. It cost me £30,000 to take over an 80-acre farm. This is in 85 when the values were much lower. It was only £1,400 an acre. And you heard about milk earlier on. I was paid 25 pence a litre last year in June. It was so wrong. The only way I can get the farm to my son without paying taxes is for me to die before next April. That's not very hard for me to do because I take 12 tablets a day because I have a heart condition. How long would I live if I stopped taking these tablets? It's horrible what's happening. This Labour government, they met with the Farmers Union. They met with the Farmers Union in January of last year, at their meeting, annual meeting, and they said there would be no taxes on farmland. They've gone back on their word.
I'm afraid.
Councillor, we need to move on to the scoping. The perfect discussion. No, Councillor, perfect for the discussion when we come to that at a later date. But now is about the scoping, Councillor.
That is. Excuse me, enough of that or I will order. You can do that later. This is what it is
No,
now.
this is important.
No, this is...
Up until when Tony Blair got elected in
I'm
'97,
I'm sorry.
we used to produce a document.
Would you suspend the meeting, please?
Members will suspend the meeting.
We used to produce a document, and a farm census. In this farm census, we had to write down